morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Skillsroad webinar. I'm Andrew Williams, the General Manager of Australian Business Apprenticeship Centre, and I'll be your moderator for today. Joining me here is our consultant psychologist and our Gen Y expert, Danielle Buckley. Hi, Danielle, and what's the central theme for today's webinar?
Hi, Andrew. Well, in a nutshell, today I'm going to talk about some of the top 3 obstacles that employers have been grappling with when trying to get the best out of their young employees. So this mainly comes from the feedback from our Skillsroad forums that we've been hosting around Australia and most recently from Canberra. But I'm also going to be answering live questions as they come to hand, which is our way of making this as cooperative and consultative and involved as possible. So please use your chat button to talk to us and ask questions as they come to mind.
That's right. So we really want to encourage you to interact throughout the presentation. So type questions as they come to mind in the chat box on the bottom left-hand of your corner of your screen, and then I'll interrupt Danielle as we go through and pose as many questions live. But if we don't get to everybody, don't worry. We'll be posting to our Facebook page afterwards. So if there's anything that gets missed, we'll follow up at the end and put it up on Facebook for everybody. So that's enough from me for the moment. So I'll hand over to Danielle to get us going. Over to you.
Just to note, we're also recording today's session, so you don't need to worry about taking notes. We'll send you a link to the full webinar via email about 24 hours after we've finished. And as Andrew said, we'll be posting the webinar on our Skillsroad website, so you'll be able to revisit it and reflect on anything that we've gone through. So thank you for joining us today. As most of you probably know, that over the last 5 years, we've run hundreds of events throughout Australia, most of them face-to-face, all with the aim of helping employers get more out of their working relationships with their young people. It's quite fitting, though, that we've decided to take a bit of a step away from our traditional face-to-face presentations, and this is our very first virtual one. And as we take this step forward, we've really had to assess the way that we're working and what we're doing and what we're providing for our consumers. And as we change the way we work, it's a really good point for us to start reflecting on, and I'd ask you to start reflecting as well as we move through this presentation and talk about some of your challenges. Are there things that you can do differently and things that you can change to get the best out of the people that you work with? So for those of you who have been working with apprentices or young employees for some time now, have a think as we move through this and think about what things you can do differently. But we are here to talk about Skillsroad, and I'm just going to use this polling tool to begin with and get everyone to have a think about and answer the poll question, have you used Skillsroad yet, our new website? And for employers, our new website is all about making sure that you have access and free access to a whole range of ideas, tips, tools and techniques. We've got our polls up here that everyone can see. If you haven't filled that in, don't worry, it's anonymous. We can't see exactly who's answered yes or no. But if you haven't used Skillsroad yet, and what we're seeing here is 76% of you haven't logged on to Skillsroad. After this webinar, I'd really encourage you to get on and have a look at the website. There are a host of free resources on there, a lot about what we're talking about today. So log on, use our information, and hopefully it can go some way into helping you improve the way that you work. Okay, so as I said, today really what we're here to talk about are your top 3 challenges as employers. So at the Canberra event recently, what we did is we shared a whole lot of research about what our Gen Ys want and some of the challenges that our Gen Ys are having in the workplace today. But at our Canberra event, we had over 100 employers provide their feedback to us. And what they said is that they wanted to know more about their top 3 challenges when it came to working with Gen Y. Based on their feedback, their top 3 challenges were work ethic, mental toughness and resilience, and not being committed to the role. Now, I know this is a webinar, but I still want you to be involved, as I've said before. So I'm going to ask you another poll question. Thinking about the week that you've just had, or in the middle of it now, which of these 3 challenges has been your biggest challenge? We'll put the poll question up so you can get involved. Thanks for all your responses. So I think we're still waiting on a few people. We've got work ethic and mental toughness and resilience hand in hand at the moment. Any more responses? So work ethic takes the lead with 45% of us saying that this week work ethic has been their biggest challenge. So we're going to start by talking about work ethic, and in particular, I want to get everyone to think about, what does work ethic mean to you? When you think about working with your Gen Ys, does work ethic mean that they need to do long hours? Does work ethic mean they need to turn up in time? You've got a chat box on your screen, and what I'd love to hear is, what words spring to mind for you when you think about work ethic in relation to working with your Gen Ys? Use the chat box. Let us know what words come up for you. Okay, so we've got a lot of great words here. So people are telling me things like communication, commitment, reliability, hard work, timeliness, determination, professionalism. It's really interesting when we start digging down and thinking about what work ethic actually means. And for me as a psychologist, work ethic is a value. Got more people chatting. Motivation, absolutely.
Another good one here, Danielle, turning up on time without excuses.
Yes.
That's come up a lot in business.
Constantly comes up, absolutely. And thanks for your participation as we move through this. As I said, work ethic really is a value. So all the words that people are telling us in their chat function really sums up what our definition of work ethic is, which is a belief in the benefit and importance of work and its inherent ability to strengthen character. Let me read that again because I want you all to reflect on that. Work ethic is a belief in the benefit and the importance of work and its inherent ability to strengthen character. If we unpack that, what work ethic really means is that young people see the value of coming to work. It means that they believe that work is valuable and important, and that they also believe that by working they strengthen their character and become a better person. It gives them confidence, competence, and autonomy. So it's really interesting because after doing these sorts of events, well, not the webinars, but the presentations for a number of years now, a piece of feedback that I keep hearing from employers is that when we talk about work ethic, employers tend to say older generations have a stronger work ethic than younger generations. And that has been research that we consistently collect. And it's interesting when you look at the definition of what work ethic is, because in fact I think I might actually agree. I think about my own situation, and for me as a 15-year-old in my first job at a local video store, when I started work, I felt what I was doing was important. I felt grown up, I felt I had independence, and I thought it made me more adult-like to be involved in work. Now, as a mum of two, working still gives me all those things plus intellectual stimulation. And I believe I have a pretty good work ethic. That value is something that's important to me. But what employers are telling us is that many of their young people don't have that belief in the benefit of working, and they don't have that belief that by working it strengthens their character. And as a result, what we see is a lot of the opposites of the things that you guys have all chatted in your box today. There's been some really interesting research for those of you who have come to a lot of my talks. I love to put research in. There's been some interesting research that has found that in fact character, so character meaning pieces of work ethic, self-control, grit, determination, persistence, actually predict success over cognitive ability. So what we're hearing is if we can encourage people and instill this idea of work ethic, we're certainly more likely to have people perform better. So given that definition, I've got a question for everybody. Whose responsibility is it to nurture this value in our Gen Y population? Is it the parents, the teachers, the employee, the employer, or all of the above? Have a think about it in your experience. Okay, so we've got 11% of you saying parents. We've got none saying teachers, none saying employee, none saying employer, and 88% of you all of the above. I tend to agree. My answer is D, all of the above. So when I ask you that question, I want you to also think about now, what are you doing in your business to nurture and breed a positive work ethic? Because whether it's a brought value in that someone arrives with a positive work ethic, or whether it's a taught value, it can be broken or nurtured by the environment that someone's in. So if we think now about the way that you work, have a think about what do you do to nurture work ethic, and that being the belief that work is valuable. What else do you do, or what have you said this week in particular, trying to make this something that you can all learn from? What have you said this week and in this last month that actually show the benefits of work? And how do you teach the importance of work? Take a moment to reflect on that. I'd love to hear some of your feedback, some of your questions. How do you do those things? So lead by example is what someone says, absolutely. If you have questions, please type them in the box and let us know. We'd love this to be as interactive as possible. And someone said working instead of being on the internet or mobile phones and doing personal things. Absolutely.
Another good one just came through, encouragement and acknowledgement of a job well done.
Yep.
I think in previous events we've had was not praise for just doing the job that they're supposed to do, but when they go over and above, I think that goes a long way.
So we had some people say that a lot of their Gen Ys actually come with that belief already instilled, which is fantastic. In saying that though, as I've said before, it's something that's malleable. So it can actually be broken, but it can also be nurtured and developed in someone. So some of the top tips for work ethic that people are talking about is trying to get their employees to focus on the things they've got issues with. They're trying to get their employees to focus on certain aspects. Involving people in big decisions, yeah, absolutely, that's important. I just wanted to tell you a story about a young guy that I'm coaching at the moment. He's a plumber. He's been working as a plumber for a number of years and has decided to venture out into his own business. He's always enjoyed his job, worked hard, and in my view, always had half of that work ethic. So he's had the hard work part, he's known the value of it, but he's missed out that part that working actually strengthens character. And unfortunately, I think he's missed out on that because of the work environment that he's been in. So, when he left his boss regularly said to him things like, "You'll never make it, working for yourself is really hard, I don't know why you bother, you should just continue working for us." Through coaching, he's taken the plunge, he's gone out, set up his own business. And he's also started working with somebody who has opened up a dialogue that says things like, "It's good to subcontract a couple of days a week and then build your own business. That's the way I started. Let me show you how to invoice properly. Let me show you how to quote jobs. Let me show you how to do these sorts of things." And what's happened in our coaching relationship with this young person is because the conversation has changed in his work environment, he's started to change his work ethic. So yes, he's still a hard worker, yes, he's still determined, yes, he's turning up on time and he's motivated. But the idea that work ethic strengthens his character is now something that is prevalent in the way that he works. And I think for employers, it's really important that we see work ethic not just as turning up and doing a good job and being motivated, but actually why. And what does that give the individual? Well, it strengthens character, and that's important in the way we operate with people. Has anyone got any questions so far? We've got a lot of people coming through on the chat function with tips and ideas of what they do. What I'm curious to know is, how do you show employees that you are appreciated? Any ideas?
Actually, we just had one question come through. It says, how do you motivate someone who doesn't want to be motivated?
Oh, tough question.
Great question.
Tough question. We're going to cover motivation in the last section. I hate to say we'll get back to that, but that's a really good question because the answer is it's really hard.
Yeah.
But we will cover that.
We just had another one come through in response to your question, and yeah, I think it's quite good, and that's thank them personally and start shout outs where they work. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's a common theme that's coming through everybody. They're taking the time to say thank you and acknowledging their efforts, and so it doesn't have to be over the top or anything large, but I think there's that personal connection that seems to be a common theme coming through. Absolutely, and that goes across the board for employees. The more we feel valued, the more we're likely to give back. So look, our top tips for building work ethic, and I hear this is a challenge, I really do, but as you've all agreed that it is also the onus of the employer to impact the way people see their work ethic. And the way that you can do this is understand and believe in the fact that work ethic is something that can be nurtured. It's not something that people have or they don't, it can be nurtured. And we can do this by showing people the benefits and importance of work, and this can happen in dialogue. Some things that you could talk about, particularly with young people, is talk about how and what they spend their pay on. That's a really good way to make them see the value of working. Because while we know money's not the be-all and end-all when it comes to work, it's something that they have that gives them value. Also talk about the things that you are doing in your life with your business that are a result of hard work. Again, having someone talk about their boss buying a new car that they've really wanted, or being able to take a holiday that they would love to do one day, shows that long-term investment in what you get for your hard work. And again, that encourages and creates a really nice work ethic in an individual. Give them the opportunities to demonstrate things that they have learned is also really important. We've had a number of people already in the chat function talk about this idea of responsibility. But again, if we come back to our definition of work ethic, being a belief in the benefit and importance of work and its ability to strengthen character. As employers, if you're not showing people that there is any benefit to them being there, if you're not helping people help them believe that they're important, it's valuable for them to come to work, it's really hard. It's going to be really hard to develop and grow work ethic. And provide feedback when people demonstrate good work ethic is also really good. So we've had someone say that they actually sit down on Fridays and toast the good things that have happened. Fantastic. We were talking earlier, and one of my favourite psychological phrases is that bad is stronger than good. Bad is stronger than good in a lot of places, but particularly in the workplace, it's so easy to focus on the things that haven't worked and the things that go wrong, and forget about what's actually working. So these are our top tips for building work ethic, and we're going to move on to talking about resilience in a moment. But before we do, has anyone got any questions that they can send through on the chat function to Andrew? Not too much coming in at this stage, so why don't you just keep moving, Danielle, and if any questions come in, then I'll interrupt and we'll go from there.
So we're going to look at mental toughness and resilience. And so the definition, I think it's always important to start with the definition so we know what we're talking about. But for me, resilience is the ability to bounce back positively from stressful situations, whereas mental toughness is a set of attributes that helps the person cope with tough situations. So over to the audience. How resilient are you? A, very, Hakuna Matata. You can tell I've been watching Disney movies. B, a little, I get knocked down but I get up again. Or C, there's work to be done, so when the going gets tough, I get going.
Okay, while we're polling, we've just had a question come through. What are some of the ways that you can thank or acknowledge your employees? And I think we've had a few answers to that in some of the posts. It could be as simple as a gesture as buying them a coffee. I think we had the Friday drinks, formal and informal acknowledgement. We've obviously got the performance appraisal process in most workplaces. Any other thoughts, Danielle?
Yeah, I said all those points are fantastic. And, I spoke to someone just recently who said, I had the best day at work. On the way in, my boss phoned me and said, mate, do you want me to pick you up a coffee? And he said that little thing just put me in the best mood all day. So little actions and thoughtful actions go a long way. The other thing I would say, what's really easy to default to as an employer is that you have to do all the thinking. If you don't know what the best way to thank someone is, ask them. Say to someone, you've been doing a great job, I really want to thank you. What's the best way I can do that? And you sometimes will be really surprised what people come back with. Any other questions?
No, I think you've summed up most of what we're getting through. I think the other side of that coin is that, and it's inevitable at work that, sometimes you've got to have a tough or a stern discussion.
Absolutely.
So we've obviously spoken about thanking and praise, but I think some of the issues that we see in the workplace now are, when you've got to have a performance-related discussion or a more formal discussion or a disciplinary discussion even. It's not. You've got to make sure that it's not the end of the world for the employee, and particularly with young employees coming through. A lot of the feedback we get is that they're just not used to that.
Absolutely. Well, look, this leads perfectly on to talking about mental toughness and resilience because, much like work ethic, it's something that you develop over time and it's something that you can change and you can grow. However, we grow our mental toughness and we grow our resilience through setbacks. That's the only way, by having been knocked down and having to get back up again. And I think what we hear from the employers is that with a lot of Gen Ys, not all of course, but with a lot, due to sort of some parenting styles, it's becoming problematic that parents are covering their children in this cloak and not allowing them to fall down. So when they do fall down at work, they don't have the skills to get back up again. But hopefully as employers, we can talk about some ways that we can...
I know that there's a lady called April Henry who's been well written in this space for some time now, and I recall something she said at a conference a few years ago that the kids as they come through school get a ribbon for coming 7th in the egg and spoon race, so just not used to failure.
Absolutely.
And I think when they get to the workplace, a lot of the feedback we get is that the employers aren't used to that, and therefore when they have to have the more difficult discussion, the reaction is disproportionate to the issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to give you some ways as employees that we can make sure we provide feedback that teaches resilience, but also propels someone forward. So, we've got some people who are tough as nails in here, but we've also got a few people who could do with a bit of work. So lucky you're listening to our webinar today. All right, so mental toughness and resilience. I'm curious. So for those of you who are resilient, where did you learn to become resilient? As a child, through your working life, in the relationships you've had, through my family, all of the above? Got most people responding with all of the above here.
Bit of an easy catch-all, all of the above.
Yeah, it is, but the thing is, it just shows that most people think that they learn resilience through a number of things, but that includes their working life. So as employers, we can't expect young people to be super resilient on day one. because we learn it through our working life, and we need to be patient with that. You know, resilience is not a trait, so it's not something we either have or we don't have. It's a learnt behaviour, and we can teach someone to become more resilient and more mentally tough in the way that we interact with them. The way we perceive something and the way we look at a situation is what determines whether we are resilient or not. So take these two circles which represent our two friends, Peter and Sam. This model comes from Stephen Covey's Circle of Influence and Concern, but it's a really good way to start thinking about how I coach someone to be resilient, and am I resilient myself? So if we take Peter, the first circle, two circles, we've got a red circle, this represents the circle of worry, and we've got a green circle, this represents the circle of control. Peter's circle of control, the green circle, is much bigger than Sam. So for Peter, when something happens, he's more likely to find himself in the green circle. And the more time he spends in this green circle, we find that the red circle, the circle of worry, shrinks and it becomes smaller. Sam, on the other hand, has a huge circle of worry. His red circle is really big, and he has a really small circle of influence and control. His green circle is really small. So when something goes wrong for him, he's more likely to focus on all the things that worry him and concern him rather than all the things that he can control. So for example, let's look at Peter. So Peter, typical person in the workplace, Peter's boss has just told him that he hasn't done the job properly. But because Peter's a resilient man, Peter's more likely to operate out of the green circle. And some typical resilient feedback that Peter might say to himself is, you know, that's fair. What can I do now to get the job done really well? He might also say, you know what, I need to learn from this mistake. He might also say, you know, I'm disappointed I got it wrong, but how can I make sure that it doesn't happen again? These sorts of comments, these sorts of thoughts and emotions, they're all part of being resilient. You sit in a circle, you sit in a place, and the way that you think and the way that you act comes from all the things that are within your control. Then we've got Sam. Sam, unfortunately, has a bigger red circle. So Sam's more likely to focus on all the things that influence and all the things that concern him and worry him. So Sam's received same feedback. Sam's boss has just told him that he hasn't done the job properly. Sam says, oh gosh, I hope he doesn't fire me. He worries. Sam says, I wonder what else I'll get wrong today. I don't know how I'm going to cope with this. Says, I bet everyone knows I can't even do these little tasks. Maybe I should just quit before he sacks me. You see, the difference between Peter and Sam is that Peter is resilient. He views setbacks through a resilient lens. And he says to himself when something goes wrong, well, what can I do in this situation? How can I react? Whereas Sam, on the other side, thinks all about the things that are also going to go wrong. He's not resilient and he's not mentally tough. Have a think about these two situations, these two people, Sam being not resilient and Peter being resilient. How does this resonate with you and the people that you work with? Have we got any questions on the model?
Nothing's come through yet, but if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box.
This can be a really challenging model to understand at first, but it's a really good way of starting to think about, am I offering and coaching my young people to be resilient?
Someone's just come in and said, yeah, they've got both types in their workplace, and that can be quite challenging.
Absolutely it can, absolutely. The way that we build resilience, though, and the way that we talk to people about trying to become resilient and becoming mentally tough begins with the way that we give them feedback and the way that we communicate. So, you know, so often we hear people use language like, you've done this wrong again, I can't believe it happened. We can build mental toughness and resilience by being really specific in our feedback. So this job today is not done correctly. Can I show you where the improvements need to be made? So we be specific in our feedback. We also know that when we're being mentally tough and resilient, we're viewing things as specific and temporary, so not universal and permanent. So when something goes wrong, something went wrong in that specific point of time and is temporary, it doesn't mean you're always going to get something wrong. So helping people differentiate between those specific things and the universal things can coach resilience. You know, we've said this before about giving positive feedback when jobs are done well. It is also really important. We've touched on that before. But also give people feedback about their ability to work in that trade. So, you know, I've said you're going to make a great comment here because this is like the person that I'm coaching at the moment. But it's important that you link, coming back to the whole idea about work ethic, it's important that you link what someone's doing now to the value that they bring to the role, because that also increases their need to be there and that whole idea around resilience and mental toughness. Again, when things go wrong, ask them what they can do about it. Remember, we're trying to teach people to problem solve in a way that's resilient. So ask them, what do you think we can do about this now, rather than always be the problem solver yourself. When you have workplace challenges, again, rather than be the problem solver, put it out to young people. Say, what options do you see in this situation? Get them to do the thinking. Get them to attempt that bounce back in a positive way if we think about the definition of resilience. And we can teach resilience in the way we solve everyday situations. This is a really, really important point. Is that when we're not resilient, when we worry a lot, like take our example of Peter, someone that operates in that red circle and focuses on all the things that are outside of their control, we're problem solving using worrying instead of problem solving using proactive thinking and resilient thinking, which is, okay, what can I do now? So as I said before, turn this over to you. Let's do another poll. I've told you a bit about resilience. I've told you a bit about an example of Peter and Sam. Of your employees, do you see more Peters, so more of the people who are likely to see the opportunities and take action? Or do you see more Sams, likely to sit in the circle of worry and not bounce back? Okay. It's great to see we've got lots of Peters coming through.
It's very encouraging, isn't it?
It's really encouraging, particularly given that mental toughness and resilience has been one of the employers' key challenges with Gen Y.
Yeah, 75% for Peter at the moment.
Yeah. Spoke too soon, it's gone down.
Yeah. Sam's making a late run. Yeah, and a good comment that's just come through is that the trouble is that Sam takes up all of your time, and yeah, I think this seems to be quite a common theme, and that I think one of the things like one of the principles of business almost is that 20% of your time is or 80% of your time is taken up by about 20% of your people sometimes. So yeah, we do tend to focus more on the problem. So trying to find ways to address that.
And look, I really believe the best question to address and coach resilience in someone is saying to that person, what can you do in this situation? They don't need to answer right away, but saying things like, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to think about what options you've got in this situation, and then I'm going to come back and we can talk about it. You know, because the way, I guess our default as employers when we're busy and we're stressed and we know the answer and the answer's easy to us, for us is to just answer and to do what we think is right. But unfortunately, that's taking that parenting approach of cloaking someone and mollycoddling them and just telling them what to do. And unfortunately, just telling people what to do doesn't build mental toughness and it doesn't build resilience. And in fact, again, when we look at the attributes of mental toughness and what leads to high performance is those attributes like grit, like self-regulation and persistence. You know, so getting someone to persist at a task for a long period of time is really, really important. And, you know, perhaps when it comes to thinking about people's recruitment strategies, looking for some of those traits is probably more important than many of the cognitive ones that people assess for. So we've got most people seem to have Peters, but a few people have Sams. So I'm hoping that with most people having the Peters in their business, they know how to ask a lot of these questions. But I'm curious to know of what we've talked about already, and we'll look at the second poll here. Who thinks that they can use some of the questions and some of the tips that we've just talked about to boost resilience amongst their staff? So whether that is to get more Peters, or just even encourage people to be even more resilient. You know, for a long time, I had those circles on my fridge. And when we'd have a bad day at work, because while this is so relevant to coaching young staff, it's also so relevant in our own life, that when something goes wrong, saying to ourselves, well, what can we do? There's no point worrying about things that are outside of our circle of control, like Sam does, because we can't change that. But asking that question, what can we do, is something that's really important. Okay, I'm glad to see that we're on track and people feel as though that they can use that. Any questions on mental toughness and resilience? Get them to take ownership of their own work. You know, that's a really great point that someone's put in the chat box here. And, you know, we have 3 psychological needs when it comes to the way we operate and the way we work. We have competence, which means we have to feel like we're good at what we do. We have autonomy, which feels like we need to be in control of what we do. And we have relatedness, which means we need to have good relationships with people. At any point of our life, if one of those 3 things is out of kilter and they're not being fulfilled, we cannot be a high performer. We cannot achieve that subjective level of well-being.
Just had a great question come through. How do you look for mental toughness in an interview?
Oh, great question. I would ask...
I had it written up.
I would be asking people to show examples of when they've had to be mentally tough. I would get them to say, I would ask the question, talk about a time in your life that you've had to be mentally tough or show resilience. When has that been and what have you done? Does that answer your question? So someone's come back and said, what were those three points, the 3 psychological needs that I said? They were competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So we need to be competent, we need to feel like we're good at what we're doing, we need to feel autonomy, so we need to feel in control of what we're doing, and we need relatedness, so we need good relationships with people. Any final questions on mental toughness and resilience before we move on? Okay, so the last point we're going to talk about, and again this comes back from the feedback from our employers from the Canberra event, is that many people are finding that their Gen Ys are not being committed to the role. So again, throwing it back to you, and I'd love you to put some words in your chat box. What does commitment mean? What does being committed to the role look like for you? We've got lots of great questions.
Coming through now, yeah, wanting to be a part of the team, turning up on time, ownership and accountability, taking an interest in what you do.
We've had someone come through in amongst all of this asking about resources. Again, all on the Skillsroad website. So a lot of the things that you guys are requesting, head to the Skillsroad website and we can get, there's materials on there for you. So a lot of people were talking about not being committed or being committed, all about responsibility. And I think that ties quite nicely into the way we define it, which is it's about being motivated to come to work. You know, it's that person who wakes up and wants to go to work every day. And it means that you have a reason or a reasons for acting or behaving in a particular way. So there's something that is making you think, I want to be there, I want to go the extra mile, I want to give it 100%. Do we agree? There's a bit of a conundrum though when I think about commitment and I think about Gen Ys. A lot of young people take jobs because they know they have to work. Yet many young people don't have a reason or a reason to continue to work. So when it gets hard, they leave. And I think, you know, we see this particularly with Gen Y as a unique, and again, you know, not all Gen Y, I want to be really clear about that, but as a unique population, unlike the older generation, many still live at home. Many don't have the financial pressures or responsibilities that older generations have. So they don't have that reason or reasons to get up in the morning and go to work if it gets difficult and if they don't feel motivated by that. I want to show you this model, which again is another one of my favourites in psychology. And as we move through this, think about where you might sit on this motivation and commitment continuum, because think about also where everyone in your workplace might sit. If we think about someone who goes to work and goes to work with an extrinsic motivation, so we'll start at the top. They're the person that took that job with you because mum said they had to. They're the person that said, I'm not going to school anymore, and mum said, well, you can only leave if you get an apprenticeship. I'm going to call some people and you can get a job. So that person turns up and they're extrinsically motivated. They go to work because someone else has told them that they need to be there. If we have people who are extrinsically motivated in our workplace, what do you think is going to happen when it gets a bit tough? Yep, they're not going to stay. They're going to leave. Next down, we have introjected motivation. This is the motivation that people have when they're doing something because they think they should. Okay, so this is the employee that you have that is working for you because they think, you know what, I should work. I should. Don't know if I really want to, but I should. So again, they're the employee that when they go to work and it gets a bit tough and you ask them to stay back and they're doing menial tasks and they're not enjoying it, what do you think is going to happen to that person when they stop enjoying it? Once again, they're probably going to leave. But then we move down the line a bit and we have identified motivation. Identified motivation is somebody who works with you because they want to. Because they think, you know what, I want to be here. I've identified that this is something that I want to be part of. Yeah, I'm going to stick at it. So what do you think happens to that person when they have a bad day? They're more likely to come back because they're the ones that have chosen to be there. They can see some kind of value in working for you and some kind of value in being at work. And if you're really paying attention, you'll notice that this links back to what we're talking about with work ethic. Then we've got the final one, intrinsic motivation. These are the people who come to work because they really want to. They really feel that they need to. They work because they love what they do, and they're with your business and with your company because they don't want to be anywhere else. So these are the people who are really resilient. These are the people who, when they do have a bad day, and yes, they still have bad days because we all have bad days, but these are the people who, when they do get knocked down, can get up much more easily. When they do have a bad day, are more likely to say, you know what, today was just a bad day. I'll be back. Does this make sense to people? Thinking about the people that you work with, and in particular, think about a young person that you currently work with. You know, what level of commitment and motivation do they have towards work? Let's do a poll. So far we've got most people talking about identified. Few introjected. That doesn't surprise me.
Had a question or more of a statement come up that identified sounds similar to intrinsic.
Yes, it does sound similar, that's true. But identified is more of an autonomous type of motivation because that person is making the decision on their own to come. Whereas introjected, that person is doing it more so because someone else has told them that they should. So that's the difference. Think should versus need to. So we've got 20 people that have filled out this at the moment, with most people saying identified. We've got one person saying intrinsic, which is fantastic to see. I'm curious now, think about yourself for the next poll. What level of commitment and motivation do you have to work? I'm loving that so many people have got intrinsic up here. So we're asking the question, what level of commitment and motivation do you have towards work? Most people have got intrinsic, few people identified. I mean, if you split them up, what we see with extrinsic and introjected are controlled goals, a controlled motivation. So really you're doing it for reasons outside of your own self-belief. Whereas we've got the last two, identified and intrinsic, really you're doing it for your own purposes. And that's where we want people to be. So if we can get our young people to be either identified or intrinsic, and we can coach that, we've got more chance of them being the performer that we want them to be. Because when things get tough, they've got a reason, other than mum or dad told me to, or I think I should, to stay in the role. Any questions so far?
Just a few statements more than questions. Someone said that the top pair and the bottom pair are clearly different from each other, but the two in the middle are quite similar, and probably a fair statement, I think.
Yeah, again, the only differentiator really between the two in the middle is introjected is about I should. So you're still doing it, but you're doing it because there's outside pressures making you think you should do it, as opposed to an inside pressure or an inside belief. Any other statements or questions?
Nothing else has come through. We've got 10 minutes to go, so why don't we press on, and if there's any questions, or any type of questions at the end, we'll take them there.
So, as I said, you know, when we look at developing commitment and motivation, it's really, really hard, and the question came up at the beginning, how do we change somebody's motivation if they don't want to be there? The answer is, first of all, if they've got extrinsic motivation and they absolutely don't want to be there, you've got a tough role in front of you. But there are ways, particularly in some of the points that we've talked about before, we can move people down that continuum, which is why I've showed you the continuum. So quite often we have a young person coming to work with us, and they are there because someone's told them that they should get a job and they know that they don't want to be at school or go down a university route. But it's really hard to be motivated about something, and particularly intrinsically motivated by something, if we don't understand all the possibilities and the benefits that that job involves. So again, based on the things that we've talked about so far, through really open dialogue and commitment and looking in on that person's life and getting to know that person, we can move someone down the line to help them think that, you know what, there's a whole lot of benefits for me being here today. It's not just about because I've got no other option. And when we look at our Gen Y population and the amount of young people who are not in work at the moment, we want to get more people into the workforce, and we want to get more young people to understand that there is great value in taking on an apprenticeship, and there is great value in being somebody who does work, not just for our economy's purpose, but for their own individual purposes. Self-belief, motivation, all of those things are important. So some top tips for coaching for commitment. So help your young people to see the value in what they're doing. We had a great story once from a diesel manufacturer who a general manager spoke to a young apprentice about the way he worked and used the analogy of one of the trucks he was working on as something that somebody had saved up for and with their baby and was basically their home and where they lived. And he told the story that when that young person saw the value in what they were doing, all of a sudden their attitude to work changed. Show them how their role contributes to the end result. So this is also really important. You know yourself, if you are going to work and you are doing a task and you have no idea why you're doing it, there's no purpose to it, and no bigger picture, it's really hard to stay motivated. So by coaching around the contribution each person makes, you'll move them down that continuum to start feeling motivated. Again, use positive emotion when linking behaviour and outcomes. So, you know, people often shy away from using emotion when it comes to the workplace and coaching, but talking about the benefit of someone's behaviour using emotion is also really important. And look for their level of motivation. So when you get off this call today, think about what level of motivation do your staff have and who needs a bit of a boost? Who needs to be moved down that line and how can you do that? And, you know, most importantly, make them want to be there. Working is so fantastic and it gives individuals so much, but they've got to want that. You know, so think about what you can do to encourage people to work with you and be down that far down in that intrinsic motivation. We're just about to finish up and wrap up and open up for questions. Does anyone have any points before we move into our action phase? Any points on motivation and commitment? So, you know, this is our first webinar, and as I said before, you're going to have to bear with me, particularly as we fumble forward and learn this new way of working. And hopefully you've bared with us and you've got something out of it. And also, as we're sort of merging into this new way of working, I'm hoping that you can sort of follow our lead and think about what things can you do differently out of the points that we've talked about so far today. So thinking about your actions. If we do a quick poll, we've talked about 3 areas. Which of the 3 areas that we discussed were the most inspiring to you? Work ethic, resilience, or commitment and motivation? Ooh, resilience and commitment and motivation are neck and neck. You know, this is really important when we come to coaching our Gen Ys, but it's also really important in our own life because if we're not demonstrating these things, there's no chance that we're going to get our younger employees to demonstrate these things. Thank you for your answers. So commitment and motivation seems to be the winner at the moment.
Resilience is quite strong too.
Yeah.
I think really positively.
Absolutely.
And, you know, surprisingly, work ethic was a lot lower than it has been in the past. So, you know, a really good result.
Absolutely. And thinking about, you know, we talked a lot about what the definitions are, but I'm hoping that the other thing that we've given you to think about today, and based on your feedback, is some really clear models and guidelines to think about how you will improve each of these areas. So, again, over to you. How many things do you think you will actively do after this webinar to improve your relationships and working culture? So have I given you nothing at all? Do you think it was a little bit hopeless? My first one, so cut me some slack. Do you think you could use at least one, or hopefully we've got a few things that people could use after today's webinar?
You'll be pleased to know we're getting 0 for 1. So no one's saying it was hopeless, Danielle, so that's a good sign.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience.
And encouragingly, most people are saying, yeah, they could take a few things. So I think that's a great sign as well.
Absolutely. And you know, a few things to do with our young population, but equally a few things to do for ourselves.
Everybody whose poll said that they would do a few. And we're getting some good comments through too. So, yeah, useful webinar. Got a lot of useful information from it. And look forward to the next one. And that's great. because there will be more, and that's what we're looking at doing here. Is this will be the first of an ongoing series, because here at the Apprenticeship Centre we feel that they're a great way to get the message out, and we understand and appreciate that everybody got some time pressures, so to take an hour out of your day is great. And so keep an eye on the website, and we'll get some emails out over the weeks and months ahead, giving an ongoing update on when the next one.
So, that really wraps it up for me to talk about those 3 sections, but we've got a couple of minutes left for questions and more questions. So if anyone's got any final questions, we've got one, I think, come through. Yeah, we've got one interesting one that's come through recently. How much of the circle of influence is related to innate temperament? Yeah, that's an amazing question. I think we definitely have a predisposition to whether we are a warrior in the way that we think, or we are more resilient. However, resilience is malleable, much like intelligence. So you don't have it, or you don't have it, or you don't not have it. You may have a step up based on the way you were parented and coached and nurtured, but it's absolutely something that we can grow and develop in all of us. So amazing question. Another one, we've probably got a minute or two left. Someone who came in a little bit later, who's interested in any suggested strategies to help young employees be more genuine in customer service, and particularly when the customer's in the older age groups. Oh, good question. It probably takes longer than a couple of minutes to answer. I would be thinking about something on authenticity, talking about what they think that person is experiencing after they've had the interaction with them. What would they experience if they'd been treated in that way? A lot of businesses I've seen do case studies on a typical client or a typical consumer and give it to their young people, so they understand what they can talk about. And do you think it might be a link back to the extrinsic versus intrinsic discussion? If someone's at work for intrinsic reasons, is it more likely that they're going to be more genuine in their customer service ethos than someone who's just there because their mum or dad told them to be there? Yeah, absolutely. And again, bear in mind, a lot of young people need to be coached around how they act face-to-face, because they often have a preference for being online. So there's sometimes a lack of skill there. Yeah, absolutely. And that's been a theme from some of our face-to-face and live workshops, that one of the common themes and common issues of discontent in the employers is the young workers, when they're sick, for example, sending a text message to them rather than a face-to-face conversation or an over-the-phone conversation. So that probably then manifests into customer service as well. Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're nearly done, everybody. So we'll just wrap it up now so that everybody can get back to their busy day. Again, I would like to thank everybody for joining us, and a reminder that you'll be receiving an email at some stage in the very near future, and that will let you know when today's webinar is up on the website, so that you can review any material and or simply want to go over it again. Also, we would really welcome any feedback. So as Danielle said at the start, if you haven't already done so, you can have a look at skillsroad.com.au and give us any feedback that you feel could be valuable, because it is a work in progress. It's something that we're really trying to adapt to the needs of the user, which is everybody online here. So any feedback for content or format or anything like that, we would very, very much appreciate. So, and on behalf of everybody, I'd like to thank Danielle Buckley again, who has done a great job, and she's been a really strong advocate for this for many years now. And as from some of the feedback I'm getting through, it appears that her presentation was very well received. So on behalf of everybody online, I'd like to thank Danielle and wish everybody a great rest of the day. And thank you again for taking some time out to log in. Do appreciate it. Thank you. And as Andrew said, please log on to Skillsroad, but also we want to keep this conversation going on Facebook. So if you have more questions that we didn't answer, log on to our Facebook page, and we'll be on there chatting away, updating posts and things to help answer some of your questions. That's the Skillsroad Facebook, just to be clear. Thanks everyone, and have a great day. Have a great day. Bye.